Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. This is Kevin Coyne with the Venture Outfitter, the Tech Ranch Venture Outfitter. We're just going to get started, and we're moving kind of slow this morning. Actually, here in Austin, I kind of was just one of the things that I want to talk about today is going to be rituals for resilience. And it's interesting that I'll talk more about this as well. I am moving slow this morning. I actually am struggling with insomnia at times. And so, one of the things I kind of hope that comes out of this is today's program is going to be all about us as a community kind of sharing different ideas about how we can strengthen ourselves. Um, we'll be following on the LinkedIn. If you're not in the studio audience, but you want to follow along for some of the chat and stuff like that, I'll be paying attention to what's in the LinkedIn. But welcome to the Venture Outfitter. Our whole work here is to discover talent, to develop talent, connect talent to opportunity, and help it scale. That is, you guys, the entrepreneurs, being the talent, and the core organization to be here to help you. But the community is really where the power comes from in this whole thing. I'd like to thank DualWorks. DualWorks is the hosting company or the co-working company that we work with. Our this little broadcast room is at DualWorks. We've been long-term fans, or I've been a long-term fan of Linda Blackman, the woman who runs DualWorks. She was a Venture Forth 17 grad. So if you happen to know how long ago that was history-wise, very successful entrepreneur. She hosts a lot of different events here, as well as if you're looking for a mailbox, a office, closed-door office, they have some really wonderful ones with floor-to-ceiling windows and stuff like that. Great place to be. Thank you for hosting us. And thank you to Linda for her long-term support of the Tech Ranch community. They have all sorts of special deals. If you don't see what you're looking for at that URL, techranch.com/dualworks, feel free to send us an email because Linda and her team have set up all sorts of special deals for Tech Ranchers. We'll be talking more about the Venture Outfitter program. The main thing you should know is that there's a lot of free interaction type of stuff that's available. And at the very end of the program, I'll tell you more about the URL, but actually I'll just preview it. If you go to techranch.com/connect, there's a lot of different URLs that actually tell you if you want to sign up as a country manager or be on our newsletter or other things. We'll start really driving the Venture Outfitter program, the network level, which has a small fee associated with it. But one of the things that I want to keep on presencing for those of you all that have been involved in the Tech Ranch years and years ago that hear about this is make sure you get involved in the community level for free. And there's a lot of things you can actually do, like we did around the actual physical facility in the past. We're doing digitally now. And now that we have entrepreneurs from more than 42 countries that are interacting, it's actually pretty interesting about what you can leverage out of the group. And one of the things that I will say today is we did host a special delegation here. On the right, you see a photo of two gentlemen from Czech Trade. We're actually supporting the new office that's being opened up by Czech Trade here in Austin. They have an office in Chicago. Most of you probably know that Tech Ranch launched the Texas Czech Venture Bridge in April of this last year. I actually traveled with another delegate to Brno, Czech Republic, and also Prague in the Czech Republic. And so some of the things that are happening out of this is we met with them, worked with helping them get both local housing as well as setting up an office, and then took them to Blues on the Green. For those of you all that are Austinites, yes, it was way too hot. On the picture on the left, for any of you that have taken some of the Tech Ranch programs, that's Brian Massey alongside with me. That's the other thing. I'll talk a little bit about this as we talk about rituals for resilience, about having long-term running buddies that are entrepreneurs that you can actually, live through the good times and the bad times, and every once in a while have a beer together. So more about that soon. But today's program really is about rituals for resilience. And I don't have a specific idea about this other than just recognizing that as entrepreneurs, we need to constantly figure out how we're, renewing ourselves over and over and over. For those of y'all that know my entrepreneurial career, if it's been here, on top of the world, it's also been in the gutter. I know that there are a lot of times that for many of us through COVID, it was pretty difficult to get businesses through COVID. Now, some of y'all's businesses did extremely well through COVID. The main thing that we might start thinking about though is I've noticed that especially since we're going through, there's like concerns about economic downturn and things like that. Part of what I actually thought is, and since a lot of times it seems like the feedback from y'all is that some of the softer conversations that are community led, that actually where we gain insight not just from my experience but also to different each one of us have a little bit of an idea about, hey, what's a ritual or a habit that you're doing that actually makes life easier, that helps you renew, things like that. As an example, I wrote down 5 of mine, but we're going to also hear from Inez. Inez is one of our community members that's in Michigan, who also does a lot of leading of coaching programs and things like that. But in my case, it's something as simple as having a normal workout schedule. Now, what's interesting is since the workouts that I used to do got paused, and then there ended up being some problems around it, I haven't. I noticed one of the things that I'm about to change again is to get back into a normal workout schedule. I've been a Aikido student for 25 years now, and that kind of stopped because it wasn't safe to practice Aikido with people really close and all sorts of stuff like that. So working out was one of them. The second one is meditation and prayer. Even if you're an atheist, I think the idea of prayer, internal prayer, not something that you're doing at a football game or something like that, like has been in the news recently, but an internal conversation with self. Even if you're an atheist, it helps just line up what's the internal conversation about what's going on. So, and then meditation is just getting quiet, learning how to quiet yourself. That's something that originally was introduced to me through the martial art practice, and has now really stuck. In fact, through COVID, I ended up spending 414 days where I did 414 days of meditation, 30 minutes to 3 hours a day. Now, mainly it was more like 30 minutes. There's only a handful of times I was like, okay, I really need to settle down, so I'm going to do a lot of meditation on those days. But that was another thing. Third thing that I'm doing right now, and I'm just throwing these out here because I'd like to actually, in a second, I want to go ahead and just call into our studio audience and have you guys say, hey, this is what I'm doing. So I'll throw out a few myself, just as starters, and then we'll hear from Inez as well. Hiring a coach, hiring a professional that you're interacting with on a daily or weekly basis, and through that practice of working with them back and forth, having just having a way that you're accountable to someone else outside of yourself. Now, I know a lot of entrepreneurs say, hey, I don't want any accountability, that's why I work for myself. The main thing that I actually think that's important is that external accountability, or even if it's not accountability, even it's just like having yourself be seen by someone else whose job it is to actually give you feedback. That's really important. I myself just stepped up again about this. Typically, at any point that that I might have known any of you, I've usually have at least a coach, and I just changed coaches. I'm now working with a guy that I talk about all the time, Ari Messel. We're going to actually have him. He positions himself as the most productive man in the world. And the thing that's really interesting about him is he's not cheap as a coach, but we're actually doing interactions like 3 to 4 per day through Voxer. It's really an interesting way of working. We're going to experiment with that with more of y'all as entrepreneurs in the community as well. But been doing that over the last week and a half, and it's been interesting. You'll have to tell me if you see things like really picking up around the tech ranch. I think that they will, just because there's already been things that he's said and done that have actually helped that. I noticed Inez is pasting some of the names into the chat session. If one of y'all, like I noticed that Melvin, you're also in the LinkedIn session. It'd be great to share some of those URLs out there as well in those in the chat on the or in the comments on the LinkedIn. The fourth thing is running buddies. The previous picture was no, the picture that was on the left was one of my long-term running buddies, friends, who's an entrepreneur. And it's a different kind of relationship. It's not the coaching relationship that I was mentioning earlier, but by having a running buddy who's an entrepreneur, like I have lots of friends. Some of them are employees at different corporations. Some of them are entrepreneurs. One of the things that I think is really essential, that's a ritual and a habit that I've cultivated for a long time, and I would actually say that it's both of those two, and we'll hear more from Inez about how to define those two words, but is having running buddies, like having someone else that, that I get together with, that, it might just be that we're having drinks, but we're talking about our businesses and our lives and stuff like that. Because there's this difficulty a lot of times of working through things and talking to people who might not understand, like a friend that's an entrepreneur versus a friend that's a business person at a corporation. There's definitely a big difference there, or there can be. And Brian and I went with the Czech team that I mentioned earlier, had a great time, and then got to have a conversation after the event that was supportive of our mutual work on our mutual businesses, that we could do things with. It was really interesting. And then final thing I'll say is, as we're building businesses, especially at the early stage, and I've really finally starting to allow myself to do this, and this is probably going to be one of the most telling habits or rituals, I guess, that I've been doing, is allowing myself to optimize my business around my own personal needs. In the 90s, especially when I started building my first business, you're not it's not supposed to be about you. It's supposed to be about the business, and you're just a servant to the business and stuff like that. And that produces businesses of certain styles. But as I've grown as an entrepreneur, and especially maybe it's just because I'm older, maybe something else, I'm like, no, the business should actually serve me first and foremost. Even though I'm obviously here to serve community members and other entrepreneurs and things like that, but the idea is to optimize around the self first, optimize around myself first. What I want to do is, that's kind of my 5 things that I actually wanted to get our conversation started. I asked Inez, and I were talking a little bit, and several of y'all know that she's been a successful coach. She lives in Michigan, used to live in Austin. We used to practice Aikido together years and years ago, and so we'd actually throw each other around a whole lot. So it's another Inez is another one of my running buddies that I just know virtually now, since we don't live in the same city anymore. But Inez, I thought that the whole idea about having you present a little bit would be great too. Do you want to tell us more about your view about rituals and habits?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I will just spend a few minutes and share some slides to illustrate some ideas, just to get the creative juices flowing, and then we'll open up the floor for discussion. So on this topic today of rituals for resilience, I just wanted to clarify a couple of distinctions. So habits are something that it's a behavior that it already became automatic. It's involuntary. You don't even think about it and just get it done. The ritual is something that has more of a sacred nature to it. So it's something more special. So I would encourage us to think about both, and in taking us towards our goals. And so just to give an overview on how I see accomplishments and how habits and rituals go into this, I think everything starts with clarity, having a clear intention. Where is it? What is it that I want to create? Leaning on our strengths, seeking support, like this community is just an example. The running buddies that Kevin mentioned is another example. And then committing to that vision, committing to that intention. And no matter what, just keep moving into that direction. And that's where the consistency and the habits and rituals come into it. It's just like sustaining that energy over time. And then, of course, once that goal is accomplished, celebrating it. And even the small things, and even just like I've had, I'm 47, when I was 35 years old, I realized that the way that I dressed and looked wasn't the image that I wanted to. I wanted to be more feminine and more elegant. And it took me like 10 years. And today it is automatic. So it's just like, but still not forgetting to celebrate it every day. So just one idea is that we have different parts inside of us. And I've had a coach teach me about thinking of them like different people and just having clarity at where we are, like letting the right person inside of me take the lead. So we have the visionary, which is the part of us that says, okay, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm creating. The planner, okay, these are the steps that I'm taking to get there. And then we have the executor, who's the doer, the one that goes there and does it. So if my goal is to be in shape, okay, I have this plan and I hire, I hire a gym or whatever. But then, 7:00, my alarm goes on. It's my executor that needs to simply do what the planner has done it to do. And the vision, because it's like, I'm not going to argue and just put down my alarm and sleep in. No, I'm just doing. And so just knowing when to be, and just the observer, because I'm not going to be perfect. And there will be the day that I slip. And so the observer observes if I am succeeding or not, and just gives the feedback, okay, of what needs to be tweaked. And anytime we're starting something new or restarting, there's this thing about launching, the phase of stabilizing, and then just getting into autopilot and just cruising over time. So some hacks to automate behavior. Micro steps means just pick something that is easy, so easy that it would be ridiculous not to do it. Trigger, so something else that reminds me to do that. Then picking a number of days to do that process. So for example, I've had an occasion, just Kevin mentioned he did 414 days of meditation. I had an occasion in which I worked out 500 days in a row, at least 30 minutes a day. And the funny thing is that when I started, I didn't even have the health to exercise because I had a physical condition that I wasn't so much pain. The only thing that I could do was stretching. So I said, okay, I'm going to commit to stretching for 7 days. And oh, that feels good. I'm going to do it for 10. Oh my God, that feels good. I'm going to do it for a month. And then, from stretching, I could do a light walking, and it just, and so it's like, and today I do things that I wouldn't even believe that I can, but just because, I committed to 1 week of stretching to begin with. Habit stacking means so the trigger is something that reminds me to do that. So if I, the water, okay, I committed to drink water. So I have the water on my desk And when I see that water, it's the trigger that reminds me to drink the water. There you go. Kevin is showing his bottle. Well, habit stacking means that I am hooking a new habit to a habit that is already established. So I wanted to get into the habit of wearing lipstick. So, well, I already have the habit of brushing my teeth. So I just said, okay, every time I brush my teeth, I'm going to put lipstick on. And sorry for the female examples. Maria will relate to it.
They're perfect.
I know
They're
that
perfect.
we're minority in terms of gender here, but you guys get the idea. So, and it also takes a mindset, because it's a lot, it's about the being more than it is about the doing. So the first thing to think about is like, I am okay no matter what. If I slip, if I forget, that's fine. Just start from scratch again. It's about progress, not about perfection. So this is a time to let go of, the over demanding and like, I have to achieve kind of thing. Easy trumps hard, because we have, like, I have this big vision and I want to build these big things. Sometimes I think that I need to go big in my day to day, and that's not. It's like, okay, what is the easy thing that I can do, the easiest step that I can take that will lead me in the direction that I want to go? And acknowledge myself, give myself pats in the back. And like the example that I told you about, just, okay, I had this vision of being an elegant woman. I look up in the mirror and I say, yeah, you look good. You can match clothes. You know what colors to put on. And I go to people and I ask for acknowledgement, and I go to my husband and I said, hey, what do you think? Do I look good? So I reinforce that to myself. I'm celebrating. I'm constantly celebrating the things that I want to, that sustain me, and celebrating even the small wins, just like I said. Something that is really dangerous, trying to do too much too fast. So just take it easy, because then it becomes so difficult that I want to give up. So I am just going to post here the question, and I will also post it in the chat, and Melvin will repost it on the LinkedIn. The question that we put in the invitation for you to come here today, like, what are the rituals and habits that you have formed over the years that have made you a stronger entrepreneur? And let's open the floor for sharing.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from several of you guys. But and as talks about celebration and acknowledging of self, that's probably the hardest thing for me. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense to me. And I know that that's one of the things that's probably totally missing. I mean, when I say it doesn't make sense, it's like, yeah, just acknowledging self and blah blah blah. Because a lot of times, I mean, those of y'all that know me on a personal level know that uh, as big as I might be, like on the big stage, I can be pretty dumpy on myself about progress. I'm like, we haven't cured cancer yet. We haven't solved even the Texas electric grid issues. People are still like, we're burning up like anything. 108 degrees here in Austin, Texas. Yeah, and so acknowledging self is kind of like one of the lowest things on the list. So I'd love to hear more about other people who celebrate. But back to Inez's question, what are the rituals and habits that you have formed over the years that made you a stronger entrepreneur? I'd love to have several different people, just even if it's just one. You don't have to actually have a list. Anyone want? Yeah, Jorge from Guadalajara.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good to see
Something
you.
that good to see you too. Something that I've been doing is watching the news or reading the news like very carefully, but at the same time, selecting the ones that I don't want to hear about when I'm not feeling up to it. So it's both a ritual that is something that I don't want to hear about, and it's an habit of keeping really well informed and sharing the news with my team. That was really useful. That's it.
Excellent, excellent. And is this any type of news? Is it reading or podcast or what's just so people get kind of sometimes just give us a little bit more concrete so we can understand and see how it
Sure.
might apply in each one of our lives.
During my workout, I listen to the daily from the New York Times, and I also have the intelligence for the economist, and they have several spin-offs from there. So if I find something that is interesting, I go for them. And then for the papers, I usually, well, I read the Guardian and the newspaper and the New York Times regularly. And every day I go through the local section of the local newspaper. And especially what I try to avoid is for example, the Mexican president is really against the renewable energies. So I know that I can't do anything about that. So I just ignore all those news that I know that they're going to affect me my performance. So and it happens the same, for example, with topics like gun control in the US. I can't do anything about that. So I just skip those kind of news and I don't share anything or get involved regarding that.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing. That's really interesting, especially I think by looking at the lower level, it's easier to see even more about what you're pointing to. I know that Omar just posted into the chat. Instead of me reading that, Omar, you want to just talk about your habits and rituals?
Sure. I mean, I have a ton, and I think actually habits and rituals are a big thing for me in general, for life and for work and for just a variety of different kind of targeted objectives that I have. And I think they're important. And I think a lot of what Ines said was just, great and on the dot, in terms of just how to think about, the differences between habits and rituals and kind of behaviors and trying to change behaviors and things like that. But, to Jorge's point, I really love, for example, podcasts. I have a variety of different ones that are both, business oriented or non-business oriented, but, are intellectually stimulating for me in a way that, helps me continue driving forward around things that I'm focused on in my business or in my, let's say venture activity or development or consulting, but then also kind of just also open perspectives around other things and just interest areas, but then still has like an element again of, for example, economics or consumer behavior or psychology or things like that, so that I can always find interconnected kind of trends and patterns in terms of like, again, where it all meets down to the business model, right, and to the purchase decision and to the success of the endeavor or the venture that I'm supporting or I'm working on. I have a bunch of other too. I could go into a lot. Like obviously the exercise, I think, and all that stuff is really important, just generally for life and just general wellness. The meditation, same thing. I also like, from an entrepreneurial perspective, networking, and I really think that for me, actively, deliberately networking and going out there and putting myself out there to meet people, meet new people, re-engage with prior relationships. Is important, because I think that again keeps my conversation habits, my ability to convey messages and thoughts, my ability to understand others' perceptions of things, and also identify new opportunities. There's things that change over time with people that you've already known for a long time. Sometimes you meet new people and you realize new kind of light bulbs around something you've been thinking about doing. And so I think for me, being maybe a little more natural of a, kind of, I guess, cross between introvert, extrovert. So, I'm still kind of an introvert, but I do like to get out there and talk to people as well. And I'm happy to do that. Some people, but I think that those are, again, some of the areas when you force yourself in uncomfortable areas, that's when you really make breakthroughs and you can really kind of push farther. And so, if it always bothers me to kind of put myself out there and talk to people, but because it does every time I do it, right? And I do it and I find myself kind of getting a little bit, again, either better at it or more aware about something, or making kind of a new realization. And it's just that concept of trying to push yourself a little bit more each time in areas. So those are a couple. I mean, I could go probably all day on different types of rituals and ideas
Let
and
me ask.
stuff.
I want to ask you about two different things, right? Right now, you're in Utah, so I
Yeah,
would like to ask you about your perspective about getting outdoors and stuff like that. And the other thing
yeah,
is, one of the other things that from my from my background of being Christian, I see you as a practicing Muslim. Like you observe a lot of the different things that happen in that faith. Like right now, we're in the time of Eid, if I understand right.
yeah. We just
And
finished it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so if you're open to it, say a little bit about that as well, because I think that's an important perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I feel like to me, the being in Utah and things that I enjoy about being in Utah is also kind of somehow connected to that because I look at it more as of a spiritual thing, and I think all of us need to have some sort of spirituality to some degree, and I don't think it has to be a religious oriented spirituality, but it can be. And I grew up as a Muslim, and I grew up learning and kind of adopting certain practices that kind of became ingrained in me, right? And that doesn't mean that I 100% necessarily agree or abide or believe in all of it, but I do feel something towards it. And there's things that I don't know. And there's things that I, again, continue to question. And, I don't know if we'll ever find some of those answers. And so I also don't want to kind of like throw myself into never endless loops of thoughts and kind of just wondering and kind of like, I don't want to dive too deep so that I can keep myself kind of sane and also able to like, enjoy all the other things. Right. And so part of that spirituality for me is the outdoors, right? Like I see an immense amount of miracles and just kind of, beauty and creation and God and just kind of like everything that's out there. And, the different things that I like to do as hobbies, for example, some of them have rituals around them. Right. And they have, for me, areas of introspection and kind of new perspective building and kind of reteaching myself certain things. I'm an avid fisherman. I love to fish, and that in of itself has moments of meditation because I'm out there by myself on the river for a couple of hours, just trying to be patient, just trying to, hunt and it teaches me a lot again about myself, about what I have to endure in life, about what I have to endure in work. And when it happens, I can't control that I get that fish, right? That's almost luck almost every single time. There is skill to some degree, but it's still, I could spend hours with good skill and never catch anything, right? And sometimes you catch a lot. And that's when, again, you get reminded that life has its ups and downs, right? And life kind of, again, will kind of cycle, and you just have to have faith in yourself, have faith in kind of those around you. And so that's, again, where for me, those things are important, being able to get away and be able to reconnect with myself and with nature and then come back and reconnect again. Like I love, again, the professional setting. I mean, I definitely get a drive out of putting a suit and tie on and going to a conference, right? And spending 3 days interacting with people. And then the next week, putting on my fishing gear and getting out to the mountains, right? And, again, those are the extremes for me that help me kind of keep level-headed. If I had too much of one thing, I personally wouldn't be able to kind of keep it sane. And that's kind of what I've learned over the years. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I'm the same way, right? Today you see me in a T-shirt. Before you, there's other times that when I'm hanging out with ambassadors and consuls of different countries, yeah, I'm in a suit. Although that's interesting too. That same set of things. I talked to the consul of Hungary on meeting us in Austin a few weeks ago to go stand up paddleboarding for our set of meetings
Yeah.
instead of yeah. So it's an
Awesome.
interesting
Yeah.
tension to play around with back and forth, back and forth.
I I would just add one more thing, maybe just to kind of like, I think part of what's helped me, and I know it's helped you, Kevin, because we both have done this. I think it's really important, given that there's so many of them now available and a lot of them can be found free, to actually go through some sort of like self-assessment. Kind of helps you do a bit of a self-assessment and checkpoint on, maybe your characteristics, your personality traits, your, skills, your talents, and have a kind of, again, a sense of where you are, maybe based on that. It doesn't mean it's 100% true or perfect, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't change either. But I think it helps give kind of, again, a bit of a compass for you to like where you can, because not everybody's the same too. And you know, some people need certain things more than others to help keep them, you know, again, level-headed or, you know, resilient or, you know, able to persevere the tough stuff. So I think it's important to kind of maybe do that, just have that little sense of where you are and then kind of go from there as well and build around it.
Yeah, that whole concept. I used to say, entrepreneur, know thyself, and you know we've used a lot of different profiling instruments, Myers Briggs, strengths finders, other things like that as well. That like you know, some of the tools can be really expensive, some of them can be really inexpensive. But yeah, I think Omar's got a really good point that you know when I started realizing that that my 5 strengths from the Strengths Finders test or you know activator, meaning I like to pull the trigger, ride the bullet. You know, I mean, even just looking through those can be helpful. We probably should have another. We haven't had a program about that in a long time, so that would actually be really good to look at. And I'd love to bring back Strength Finders into that. Jello, make sure we write that down. What else? I'd love to hear from anyone else that'd like to share maybe a strength or two, a not a strength, but a habit or a ritual that you use that helps keep you going, keeps the trains running on time.
Yeah, hey, Kev.
Carlos, yes, from Monterrey, Mexico. Welcome.
Yeah, hello, everyone. So, you know, given that we're in the pandemic, and currently in our company, everyone is working remote. So, you know, one of the rituals that we do is we have a daily with everyone in the team. So it's, you know, we're kind of not playing exactly by the rules of Scrum or Agile, right? A lot of people talking about their projects, but it does give a sense of community to everyone that they're being heard. And if someone has an issue, you know, that has nothing to do with what someone else is doing, it helps, you know, knowing that we're not alone and people offer to help now on almost on a daily basis. So that ritual has actually helped us a lot. So everyone talks to everyone every single day, first thing in the morning, or almost first thing in the morning. So I thought that probably would be useful, you know, just in this new stage of working remotely, and you know things are shaping differently. So that's one that has helped us a lot.
You know, that's a good point. Like when I lived in Chile, what you just said reminds me of this. There's a really strong practice that as soon as you get to the office, you walk around the office. And this is when I was in Chile in 2003. You walk around the office and you say hello to everyone. You either, you know, if it's a man to a woman, you give her a kiss on the side of the cheek. If it's a man, you shake his hands. You look eye to eye. On both cases, you look eye to eye and you say hello. And then at the end of the day, before you say goodbye, same thing. And it's a really interesting practice to have, especially in the online world where we don't have that kind of connection. I think you got a really good point about that, Carlos, because I know that especially during that the later months of 2020, I was going pretty stir crazy with no connection, and that we weren't necessarily doing these meetings as rigorously as we are now at the time, just because you know so many people were like, well, I don't know, what are we supposed to do kind of thing versus taking action and being connected to others. That's a good example. Who else? Anyone else have like a example that they'd like to share? I know that it's interesting. We've got a bunch of things happening in the chat, so I'd love to actually have someone bring some of that conversation into the fold here. Anyone like to share?
Hey, Kevin, Omar Shaker is listening on LinkedIn. If he's still there, he's been commenting live. And In Search of Gumption, the writing that he's doing is a wonderful ritual that he puts out there for everybody to follow, and he shares how it helps him. So that writing ritual. Yeah,
say more about it. It's interesting. The comment hasn't showed up on my LinkedIn just yet. Good to hear from you, Omar. Omar Shaker, who's last time I talked to him, he was in Cairo. I'm not sure where you're at these days, Omar, but thanks for sharing. What was the practice, Melvin?
So he writes. He looks internal and says, okay, these demons got to go. So he just shares the things and how it helps him in his life. And there is a lot of funny, crazy things that he shares out there. And what I've seen, he's traveling all over the world and just taking care of business and becoming a better person through that writing.
Yeah, the Dr. Jamie Pennybaker at the University of Texas at Austin in the psychology school has written a lot about that they're like the people who do self-reflective writing typically grow faster just because your brain uses one set of concepts when you're thinking, or one set of connections when you're thinking, another set of connections when you're speaking about the same subject, another set of connections when you're writing about the subject or typing about the subject. And so if you want to work around some kind of mental block, you can attack it with just that, and you can do that yourself. It's a really powerful thing. Dr. Jamie Pennybaker is the person who discovered that. Really interesting research. Proud to say that came from my alma mater, because I didn't realize that until I actually started researching into the area. But that's cool about what Dr. Omar Shaker is actually doing as well. If at all possible, will you see that that's posted into the to the LinkedIn chat as well?
Yes, sir.
Cool, thank you. Inez, you've got your hand up. Come on
Yes.
back in and tell us.
Yes. So I just wanted to say a few things about the Strength Finder. It's a tool that I have used in the past, both as the recipient of it and as someone who's working with clients who have taken the assessment. And I would like to recommend it's one of my favorites. It's pretty strong. And I think that what is really powerful about it is that it gives language to speak about what is best within us. And it's something that most of the time, and most people don't have the practice of. And it gives language, and it just gets us to the, oh yeah, this is something that comes naturally to me and I can leverage. And so this is, it has been rebranded as Clifton Strengths. The link is in the chat. And there's also a book. So they have defined 34 strengths. So you can get the full assessment for $50, or you can also get the book, which I also recommend, which is strengths-based leadership. And it's pretty much a guide to step into leadership from a place that is much easier, which is from my own strengths. And also another assessment, and the one that comes with the book, it has a top 5, your top 5 strengths. And there's another book that Gallup published called Born to Build, How to Build a Thriving Startup, a Winning Team, New Customers, and Your Best Life Imaginable. And they did a lot of research on successful entrepreneurs, successful companies, and they had a particular criteria in terms of growth, like fast growth, and so they looked for patterns and what was making these companies and these entrepreneurs so successful. So they put these into, they separated them in 10 behaviors. And the interesting thing is that I don't need to have all 10. I just need to be aware which of the 10 I have, and make sure that when I'm forming my team, I have other people who will take care of the other 10 pillars that we need to be successful, to be an entrepreneur. So these are 2 books and assessments that I would like to recommend.
Yeah, no, we should definitely bring this back. In fact, I think in the past, I'll do a shout out since Kim Johnson's in. Kim, does your wife still do work in with Strength Finders?
Yeah, yeah, she's doing a group with the several different groups, but yes.
Yeah,
so
part of what we needed.
Omar had a comment that great for Gallup access to tools. Anybody who takes the Gallup, if you're a certified Gallup coach Carol is, and she's also done the well, it used to be called the entrepreneurial, evaluation and those types of things. If you do it, it's like several of these assessment profiles. If you're a certified coach, they can get, once you take it, a certified coach can get access to that and prepare, show your growing edges, what your strengths are, your top 5, your bottom 5, and so Inez was spot on in terms of the entrepreneurial. It used to be called the EP10, I believe. Now it's called something else, but it boils it down into how to balance out teams, and then the Gallup Strength Finders evaluations. It isn't a hiring thing. It's really how to help you get the best out of your relationships and your teams. Carol's even used it for people getting married in terms of what to watch out for when you think your spouse is going off the deep end. It's like, no, they're really saying this. So point being is she does coaching. It's consulted team, connectteam.org. But there's Gallup.
Well, how about this? What we'll do is I'd love to have her come talk. Well, there's been a couple different things, like Omar and Inez were both has said things in the chat. Connectedteam.org was the URL that Kim was just talking about.
And the EP10 that Kim is talking about, it has been rebranded, and it's in this book that is on the chat called Born to Build.
Yeah, Born to Build. Yeah, they started out of the EP10 back in olden times. I was one of their first people to take it, and then I think it's now called the BP10, so they could more generalize it. The interesting thing about the history of that that report, that was actually originally funded by the Mexican government many years ago when they were trying to figure out how to recognize entrepreneurial talent in Mexico to then get more resources to that targeted talent. And it interesting enough, if you read the study about it, it had an effect. Go ahead, Kim. You were about to say something.
No, yeah, she could do an overview of what it is and how she uses it in different practices. If you want to have Jello reach out sometime.
Yeah, that sounds great. Part of what we've done in the past is we've had through the Venture Forth programs, we've had more than 600. Entrepreneurs go through the programs and use that as one of the profiling tools. I think it'd be great to do that. And recently, I didn't know that we're going to talk about Gallup today, but I started brushing off the dust on that account so that we could start doing that too. Because I think that as I look at the impact that I'm being told about TechRanch over the years, a lot of it is not necessarily about the activities of, getting funding. That's important, but figuring out how to get through the rough spots, which whether you have funding or not, I think that TechRanch has had. It might have just been that for whatever reason, my entrepreneurial journey has had a lot of scars in it, and so I'm more naturally focused on having conversations around overcoming the scars. How do you transcend the oh shit factor? Sorry. And so I think that it'd be interesting to bring this back and talk about that. So Kim, we'll definitely reach out to you about that. Jello will ask for your contact information if you don't mind. I know that I have it, but Jello, if you'll make sure you'll grab it so that we can actually make that connection. I think it's a really good thing because definitely got a lot of value out of those type of tools. But more importantly, now tying this back into the session title, right? The habit or ritual, depending on how you're looking at this, is to really be looking in the mirror, right? The concept here that I think that I want to make sure I point out if we're talking about an assessment tool or working with a coach or whatever it might be, is looking in the mirror to see, sometimes it's really hard to see ourselves. Why is it that a golfer that's as successful as, like, say, Tiger Woods or something like that, and is so successful. Well, supposedly he has 9 different coaches, that coach different aspects of his game, right? Same thing about myself and my martial arts practice. Having lots of different people who are giving me feedback. Sometimes it's hey, move your hands right here. Sometimes it's like that accidental fist in the face, but feedback nevertheless. Either way, the more general concept is being able to look into a mirror and having a really intense, deep understanding of self and discovering self more. That's what helps you get through the rough parts. And whether you get funding or not, part of what actually keeps you going is whether or not you actually can see, okay, what's the breakdown? Okay, I see the breakdown now. I can work around the breakdown. Or what is the strength? What brings me joy? Those of you all that know me, back to the Strengths Finders, my number one strength is activator. My number one strength is pulling the trigger and launching new things. Right? It's like almost to a fault in times. We're coming to the end of the time that we have together. I always appreciate these kind of community conversations because I think that the real wisdom is not from any one individual, but we will go ahead and start with a handful of coming soon programs. We're going to start having other experts to come speak to us and stuff like that around these different areas. If you'd like to influence who those people are, please make sure that you share with us. Jello has a form that he grabbed that we'll make sure, if at all possible, Jello, if you could post into the chat session and also onto the LinkedIn, it would be great to go ahead and have your feedback, because we want to make sure that these programs, really serve the interest of where you guys would like to see things go. Let's see. Kim Johnson just said that if anyone is looking for immediately engaging a coach around the Strengths Finders, her name is Carol Johnson on LinkedIn. And as just said, a quote from Bill Gates: most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Definitely keep that in mind. So, but what we'll do, unless there's anyone else has anything that they'd like to say before we close it up for the day. I don't see any hands, so part of what I'll do is we'll just go back to our slides for a second. Thank you for sharing your rituals, the habits, the ideas of what you're pointing to. We'll cultivate this conversation even deeper on the Slack channels just to keep on going. Like, I think that some of the sharing around that can be really helpful, because sometimes it can be something so simple that can fundamentally shift a person's life. A little bit of meditation, a little bit of insight, certain conversations, one assessment that you take it to find out more about yourself. We'll definitely share more about that, because that helping you to keep on going is a really critical piece of this whole process. And with that, if you haven't signed up for the TechCrunch newsletter, or if you want to get involved as a country manager, if you want to make sure that you're aware of, we have kind of a clearinghouse website page or web page that has a lot of these different activities in it. The thing that make sure you go directly to that site, get signed up, just so we know about you, that your interest and stuff like that. Sometimes people send me emails, and I do my best to process all the emails I can. But the truth is, if you use these systems, things will go into the right place so that you actually get invited back into like the mentor meetings or the country manager meetings or whatever it might be. But it's through working together that we can actually make a big difference and really leverage on the muscle represented by our community. But with that, what we'll do is we'll wrap up for today. It's always an honor to be a part of a group of entrepreneurs that are driven by vision and values. Let's go change the world for the better together. Good work, everyone. Good luck with everything, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.